Hi, I'm Yasmin, a wife and a proud new mom with a background in perinatal nursing. Welcome to Birth Unboxed, where we talk about all things birth, whether it's unassisted free birth, home birth with a midwife, or in a hospital. I believe every woman deserves the right to choose how and where she gives birth. I created this podcast to raise awareness so women can make informed choices and feel empowered in their births. By sharing stories and learning from one another, we can reclaim our power and become the ultimate authority in our own birthing experiences. Sisterhood is powerful, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to the Birth Unboxed podcast. Today with me here I have Mariana. Well, not actually with me, but on the other side of the screen. It would be nice if I could do in person, hopefully
Yes.
one day. But for now, this is how it is. So welcome, Mariana. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me and for the invitation.
Thank you. I've been wanting to talk to Mariana for a long time, so I'm happy that finally having her here. So Mariana has two beautiful children, and she's had two cesarean sections. So we're gonna go into that and talk about what all of that has been for you, because a lot of women have two C-sections, and it is what it is. They're fine with it. They don't really think twice about it. But a lot of women are starting to think about it and being like, was that necessary? Is that the only way? Is that how it has to be? Or could things have been different? And when we start to tap into that, it can be uncomfortable. And a lot of the time, women can feel attacked if we come off as like, oh, we're criticizing C-sections. And we've both had C-sections here. So, this is coming from people who have had these experiences. And we both acknowledge that sometimes C-sections are necessary and they're life-saving and they're amazing. But they're not necessary all the time. And it does rob us of something. And it's okay for us to be pissed that sometimes it was unnecessary and that we were pushed into it, whether strongly or even us not really knowing much and maybe even requesting it at times. The story can be so many ways, but one thing that's agreed upon is that a lot of the time our birth is robbed in a way, not only for us but for our babies, the way they're brought into the world. And so much of the power that women have is taken away from them, and it's become this whole medical process when it's just birth. It's not a sickness, it's just birth, and it's beautiful and powerful. And it should be that. We shouldn't steal that away from women the way we have been doing. So, Mariana, I'm going to let you take the stage and start us off the very beginning, wherever that was for you.
Well, so I just want to introduce myself quickly. As Yas already said, I have two children. I do consider three because it actually started all with my first pregnancy in 2019. So I'm married to Bruno. He's my partner, an amazing one, and he may join us later just to give his perspective, like a male perspective on this.
Yeah.
And we got married in 2017. We always had this planned life that fortunately we were able to kind of like keep our timelines and just have everything the way that we wanted. So we always wanted to have kids about 2 to 3 years after our wedding because we wanted to enjoy a little bit, and we knew things were going to change. We were always very realistic about it. We both always wanted kids, more than what we do now. We started off always saying like, we want 4 kids. But then I'll tap into that later, how my experiences have, had like a certain impact on that. But I got pregnant about 2 years after we got married, and it was October 2019 I got pregnant. November I found out. December I had a miscarriage, and it was a little bit traumatic because we were both living in Brazil at the time, but we were visiting my mom who lives in Canada. She's a Canadian citizen, and so are we today. But we'll get into that later. And I was visiting her. We went for a short trip from Toronto to New York. And when I was in the New York hotel, just a few minutes before we took the flight back to Toronto, I looked at a pharmacy and I was like, I need to get a pregnancy test out of the blue. I was like, my period wasn't late or anything. It just like, I had this like urge to get a pregnancy test. I did. I bought 3 different ones, took them all positive. I was like screaming. I called my mom into the bathroom and I was like, Mom, I'm pregnant. I was so happy. And then I asked the flight attendants to announce it on the flight to my husband. It was a beautiful...
Oh, that's how he found out?
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
It was a very cute video that we have. Not very well recorded because it was me. And, but we were very emotional. Everyone was clapping. It was a full flight.
That's so sweet.
We were super happy. And it was like that sense of accomplishment of like another journey and stage of our lives that we planned and accomplished, and we're now happy and ready for this. And then a couple of weeks later, I started experiencing some bleeding, and my mom tried to calm me down, like, hey, like it can be normal, like don't freak out. Just I went into, because I was a tourist at the time, I just went to a walk-in clinic where her family doctor is, and it was a lot of back and forth because she couldn't treat me because I'm not her patient. So she just like referred me to an ultrasound clinic, which is when everything regarding motherhood started to change. And I realized that we should have control of it all, but we don't. And we depend a lot. We rely a lot on healthcare professionals, and their conduct, their approach really changes your story, your entire story. So the technician, they're not supposed to comment on it, but I did the first ultrasound, went back home waiting for the results, went back, a second technician saw me, and she started making comments like, who told you you're pregnant? This could be a false positive. Like, did you even take a blood exam? And I'm like, no, I took like 3 different pregnancy tests. I have like the symptoms. I'm now very late on my period, and like a false positive, I know it's very rare, but like, let alone in like with 3 different pregnancy tests. So she's like, you're probably just experiencing a false positive. There's no need to cry. There's no need to be emotional. She couldn't she wouldn't let my partner in the exam room. And then I was like, what in the world is happening? Like, I just wanted to cry and have him there because bleeding started to get worse and worse and worse. And then I got home. A few days later, I got the exam results. And mind you that it was one day, I had to do the ultrasounds one day before I took the flight back home. I called my doctor in Brazil, who had been my gynecologist since I was 11 years old. And I remember that very well. The bleeding started on a Sunday. I went for the ultrasound and exams on a Monday. The flight was on Tuesday. We had a short stop in Mexico. And that was very memorable to me because I was a zombie. I went into Mexico City, like for the, like we were supposed to spend the day. And it's like all blurred because I was so in shock. I didn't have like emotion. Like I remember my husband asked, like, at this time he knew already, but it was such a weird scenario because we weren't able to talk about it because it didn't have the definitive results. And the family doctor said, well, you have to confirm it with your doctor in Brazil. Like, she couldn't give me the news. Like, I don't know if that's because of like I wasn't her patient, I was a tourist, like whatever it is. She wasn't just straightforward. She was just very mysterious about it. So first pregnancy, and I was like, did I have a miscarriage or not? Like, am I pregnant or not? Like, what the heck's happening? So I was in shock. I couldn't process the information. I remember my husband, like, because he was very aware of what was happening and that the pregnancy no longer existed. So he was like, do you want to have a beer? I remember we were at this restaurant. He's like, do you want to have a beer? And I'm like, no, I don't know if I'm still pregnant or not. Like, my doctor is still, like, I was still hanging on to this
of course.
hope. Eventually, I went back to Brazil. My doctor saw me on Friday. All started on a month, like on Sunday. Then Friday, he saw me and he was like, well, your uterus is now clear. Like, I was experiencing heavy bleeding. I will never forget the pain because even though it was just like a few weeks, it's a different process. It's not the same as a
Yeah.
period. Like it's heavy pain, heavy bleeding, and like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of clots, and you feel like something is disintegrating from your body. You're like,
Yeah.
which is actually what it is. Like you're
Yeah.
losing
Yeah.
a part of you. And it
Mm-hmm.
was very shocking. So then when I finally understood that, I cried every single day, went back to work at the time, told HR. In Brazil, there's a law that if you experience pregnancy loss, you are entitled to 2 weeks of maternity leave, paid maternity leave,
Mm.
which they did not offer. We were in a high season and they were like, just go back to work. When I told the HR
Mm.
lady, her first reaction to me was to look, it's very common. Everyone goes through that, a lot of people. And then she just turned to the side and started talking to another colleague about her daughter's first birthday.
Wow.
And it broke me. So for a
Yeah.
long time, I was crying. I remember I did a playlist, like I made a playlist on Spotify that I called um, like to help with the sadness or something, or to like cure the sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the same playlist up until today, which I later changed the name, and I'll tell you why in a bit. Um, but for about a month and a half, like I had to get out of bed to work, but it was like I
Yeah.
didn't exist. It was just like the body, like my soul was like blurred, everything.
Yeah.
So that was the first traumatic experience. Shortly after that, like after I felt like I had no tears anymore, like I cried, I listened to that playlist
Mm.
until I had no more tears. And then we decided, are we ready to try again? And I had a very supportive partner at this time. And because I have type 1 diabetes, I'm considered a high risk pregnancy. The doctor made sure to tell me it's not because of that. It's actually something that 25-30% of women do experience while they're, with pregnancy. Like, unfortunately, it can be just like a combination of factors, or it could be just a fetal anomaly that prompted a miscarriage. It's not your fault. So I felt very embraced and very well taken care of. And also, I knew this doctor for like 20 years. So I felt like, okay, everything is okay. Everything's going to be fine. And the classic, because you got pregnant the first time, that means you can get pregnant again. Look at it from the bright side, because people want to tell you good things, right? They There's not really a lot of words that can help you. And I find that for miscarriages, what you want to hear is nothing. You maybe just want a hug, or you just want people to listen. You don't really, there are no words that will cure you from that or that will help you. Um, Maybe like, I'm here for you. That's it. And my partner did exactly that, which is why I love him so much. So we decided to start trying. And just like the first pregnancy, we got pregnant again in the first attempt. It was beautiful. Got pregnant in January 2020, found out February. The same day I got a job offer, and the employer was very supportive because I told them right off like the bat, like, hey, I literally like 2 minutes ago found out that I'm pregnant. They're like, we'd love to have you here, blah, blah, blah. Great.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which is not very common in Brazil. But then that was February 2020. March, COVID hit. So I was robbed of the ability to share the news the way that I wanted with my friends, my family. Like, if everyone remembers, well, COVID in the beginning, it was like, we thought this is just going to be like another flu season type, like whatever. Like, we had different flus like that happened in the previous years, and they all lasted like a few weeks, and it wasn't anything like COVID. So as time went by, I kept thinking, why does everything feels like it's being robbed from me, like a first pregnancy? Um, and then when I've had the miscarriage, everyone else around me was pregnant, which was also very hard. And I was like, why me? Like, why?
It always feels like that, like when you have a miscarriage, that
Yeah,
like everyone else is pregnant and everyone's
yes.
talking about their babies, and it's all you can see and feel, and it just feels so overwhelming. I feel like that's just how
It,
it is, right?
it is, to me, it was like I'm a very like emotional person. So to me, that was particularly emotional because not only even though my doctor was nice, you keep wondering, like, why? What did I do? Could I have done anything differently? Like, it was my first pregnancy. Like, something was wrong and I didn't notice. Like, should I have traveled? Like, was it? And then you have people with multiple opinions. Like, oh, maybe like I know people who like took a flight early in pregnancy and they had a miscarriage, and it's like I didn't know I was pregnant. Like, and there was like no, like I had to take a flight. Like I was visiting my mom, then I had to come back
Yeah,
home. Like,
exactly. It's just like that's not a thing, right? But I'm sure someone will, because unfortunately miscarriages are common. I'm sure anyone can think of, oh, this person did this, so you shouldn't have done that. When it's like that has nothing to do with it, which is how it is. But
yeah,
people like to try to explain everything.
yes. And when I found out I was pregnant again, starting a new job, COVID came, I was like preparing the baby shower because I was like, ah, this thing is gonna like blow over. That's it. Then I had to cancel it. And then I couldn't see anyone, even the family in the beginning, because we couldn't really see anyone. We were very isolated. I was just like working nonstop. The pregnancy was going super well. I mentioned I have diabetes type 1, but super under control. I have, fortunately, the privilege of wearing an insulin pump, which helps a lot with the treatment. So it was extremely like and I was very disciplined. Um, I would only leave the house for doctor appointments. Everything seemed perfectly fine. Um, I discussed my birth plan with my gynecologist and OB, which was the same one that had been with me for a very long time. And again, this was the person who embraced me and helped me through the miscarriage. So I didn't really think of going to another professional or questioning, is he like pro C-sections? Like, is he going to put me through this? In every appointment we discussed, and I said, I would like a vaginal delivery as natural as possible. Um, unless it's a life-threatening emergency, which then I can understand, which is when I started studying about like birth, labor, and everything involved. And as a person with severe ADHD, we can be very hyper focused on things. So when you start on something, you just go deeply. Um, and I remember, which was again another traumatic thing. In Brazil, and I don't know if like there's more Brazilian women listening to this, but in Brazil, unfortunately, I think we have a problem that everything becomes a product. The human centered, the humanized birth, doulas, perinatal educators, humanized doctors, which should not even be a thing. Like every doctor should be human, women centered, but it becomes a product for the
Yeah.
privileged.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to a few doulas and I felt, I think the right word, it may be strong, but like a little disgusted by the approach and the response, because every time they would talk to me or that I would reach out to a doula that was referred to me, they were like, who's
Mm-hmm.
your doctor? Is he part of like the humanized doctor network? Like, is he well known? And I'm like, I don't even know what the hell is this. Like, this is my second pregnancy after a miscarriage. Like, and to me, that was all new, right? To me, it was like, first, as a patient with diabetes, at first I thought my only option was a C-section. Upon researching it, I understood no, like that's not true. That's like a very like outdated concept, and I can't have the birthing experience that I want, especially because I'm doing everything in my power. Like my
Yeah.
diabetes is under control. I'm taking care of myself. I'm doing pelvic physiotherapy. I'm doing everything that I can, which we know that does not guarantee
Mm-hmm.
a certain birth. And I, at that point, because of the miscarriage, I think the silver lining was an advice that I got from someone who told me, you know what, Mariana, this is your first experience and it's a negative one, but it's the first proof that in motherhood, you have no control over anything.
Yeah.
So keep that in
Yeah.
mind. And I did. So when it came to my second pregnancy, although I was very keen on having a natural birth, I also understood that the outcomes could be different. The journey could be very different. So that was something that I was always very conscious, but you're never prepared for an outcome that you have no saying, that you have no control, or that you're feeling, or that you feel pushed, and sometimes very subtle, like in a subtle way. So
Yeah.
I went into labor a little bit prematurely, 36 weeks and 2 days. Um, at this time, although I had done a lot of research, like it doesn't guarantee, like you can do all the research in the world. It doesn't guarantee that you will be prepared for every sort of scenario. And sometimes there are scenarios you only find out once you're in labor and delivering. So I went to the hospital. I called the doctor and he said, how are you feeling? And it all started with like, I remember because that day I went to the pharmacy and my husband very kindly says that I looked like a penguin walking. And I was like huge. It was 1 week after his birthday. I went to pick up a few things. It was a Saturday. And I was ready to like prep the maternity bag, and all the things on Sunday. I wasn't prepared. I was like 36 weeks. That's like a little early, like, but let me get things done. And I had set Sunday for that. I went to sleep and I could not sleep. I felt like a lot of back pain and I was like, like, what is this? Weird. And then I decided to take a shower to see, let me take a warm bath. It can be just like the early stages, like that can last a few days or like weeks. Took a shower. It got way, way worse. Yeah. Then I called the doctor and he said, you know what? Like, you live far from the hospital. It was in the middle of COVID, September 2020. Why don't you just go to the hospital to get checked out? Be prepared, like take your bag and everything, because if you actually if we identify that you're in like active labor, then we'll just keep you there at least for observation because you live far. Like I don't want you to have to go back home and like it was a little bit of a commute.
Yeah.
Thank God that started happening like very late at night. So about 11 p.m. I went to the hospital and then the contractions were like getting much stronger. But I never timed them. Like it just like there was no time. Like nothing was ready. My husband forgot our marriage certificate, which we needed to do like in Brazil, some hospitals offer for you to like register the baby, like and like the notaries in the hospital.
Okay.
So he forgot the car seats, this and that. But anyway, we just went and grabbed a bag with whatever I could like put in.
Yeah.
I remember my grandparents, because we weren't at their house at the time. Because of COVID, we were there like living with them to take care of them. I didn't want them to go out. And my grandparents were like, what's happening? It's like middle of the night. Like, I'm like, I'm going to the hospital. Don't know if I'm going to be back today. I'll, let you guys know. So we went to the hospital. Then I went to triage. I think the first bad thing, COVID, they were understaffed, not prepared. They split me from my husband so that he could park the car. And I had the birth plan with me, but because I was going to do everything, including printing it on Sunday, I didn't have it with me. I only had it on my phone.
Okay.
So when I did the triage, they kind of like took all my things away, and then gave it to my husband. And when my husband got changed, they asked him to leave all the personal belongings in a locker. So I had no phone. My playlist was not there. And my husband went to the reception multiple times asking, could you please print the birth plan? Because this is very important for her. Please do it. And they just were so understaffed that they didn't. Eventually, the triage doctor said, oh, things are progressing fast. I see like it feels like your water broke. It seems like you're dilating fast. And at that time, he said, you're like about 4 centimeters dilated. So we'll just like put you in a like pre-labor room. And I was alone. I was like, I want my husband. Like I want him because he was my advocate and he was prepared for this. Of
course, yeah.
But because the process during COVID, and I understand that like no one was prepared for it. Oh, but at the same time, I'm like merciful and forgiving, but at the same time, like it was September and COVID had been there for a while. Like it's not like it was the first month or so. I feel like hospitals, especially the hospital that I gave birth in, was like the top hospital in São Paulo in Brazil. Like I was expecting it to be a little better prepared. So I went into this room. It looked like it was all white. It had like a plastic chair for my husband, the stretcher, and a little bathroom. And I was like, that's not what we had discussed. They have like the birthing rooms. And my doctor said he was very well connected. Like like I was in a hospital, he would move me to the labor room with like the bathtub and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Hospital crowded, understaffed. I didn't even see a nurse. She just like literally threw me in the room. It was so cold, and it was a central AC, so I couldn't really change the temperature. I was freezing the entire time, asking for water, asking for food,
Ugh.
asking for a blanket, nothing. At one point, because the contractions got a lot worse and I started like vocalizing, like being a little bit more vocal, I go into the transition and feeling like I need to go to the bathroom, like, which we know it's more related to the urge to push. Then when I requested, could you please at least turn on the shower if I can't go into the labor room? Like, I need to be like, water was always something that I wanted. She came in, not very willingly, and just turned on the shower, turned her back and left. And the shower was cold.
Ugh.
And because I was already in the transitioning state, I did not have the ability to adjust the water temperature. My husband was lost trying to go in and out. He couldn't go grab his things because of COVID, because if he left, he wouldn't be allowed to come back in, which is stupid because he was allowed to come in the first time.
Yeah,
so like,
that's how it goes.
You came in the first time from the outside. If you go out to grab some stuff, like...
No. Yeah.
What's the difference? Like,
a lot of the rules made no sense, but yeah, that was how it was here too.
And so at that time, I was like, "There's nothing to calm me down. I don't have like my music and the playlist."
So you're alone this entire time.
Well, he was there, but he was more like trying to find a nurse and trying to be there for me and trying to find a nurse and trying to get my things because the playlist was very special, not just because I wanted music, but because it was the same playlist that I had prepared from when I had the miscarriage. And that was what got me through it. And I changed the name from the playlist from like to cure sadness to share happiness. And I still have it.
That's beautiful.
But I couldn't hear it. I couldn't listen to a single song. And he, first birth, he was very in shock. We didn't expect that. Bruno was extremely in shock. I think he expected to be a little bit more active and like a little bit more of my advocate and just like know the things to do. But although like I was like the center of it because I was the person giving birth and like in labor, he was also becoming a dad. He was also experiencing the fears of like having lost his first baby and becoming a father and seeing his son for the first time. So that's something that sometimes we don't take into account, like the effect on men and
absolutely,
like, what can they experience? And I have a lot of
they want to protect you and be that advocate, but it's also their first time doing that, and sometimes the power differential with the doctors and the nurses can be so overwhelming, and a lot of the time they don't care that it's the dad. Like they just, you don't know what you're talking about, leave it to us. And it just puts them like in the corner when they're like, no, like I also know what's best for my family and I want to protect them and I want to advocate for them. But a lot of the time they're not heard.
And being like, the baby was fine, even though it was a preterm labor. There was nothing, no complications, like nothing that would justify any sort of emergency. Labor was progressing and it just seemed like I wasn't dilating fast enough. And mind you, it was a Saturday night. So I pulled my doctor from a family dinner, and little did I know, and I only knew that when he was cutting me and opening me up, he had a C-section scheduled for the next morning. So that was a thing. And I was in this horrible room, all white, lights, like extremely bright lights. We couldn't turn it off. We couldn't change the AC temperature. The water was cold. No one was bringing me water, food. And by that time, I hadn't eaten for like hours and hours and hours. And I was in labor, but to me, everything was progressing. Like it was just a matter of time. And I knew that. But when you get to the transitioning state and you're no longer able to speak for yourself, I remember he kept on coming back and doing like the exam, like checking my cervix more times than I would like. And every time he would come with like a little subtle comment such as, you know what, it's time to change the plan. It's time to change the plan. I don't think you're going to be able to do it. Like if you're, that was like very violent, but like if you're in this much pain, if you're screaming this much now, how are you going to push? How are you going to push the baby out? Like, I don't think you can do it.
Ugh.
Which started to undermine my confidence. And all that happened and continued to happen up until a point where I felt the urge to push. And it was hurting so much because I was in pain. And I kept asking, is there anything you can do? And here's what's controversial. When the triage doctor assessed me 4 centimeters dilated, when he came in, he was like, you're just 1 centimeter dilated. And I've never heard of like such a difference. I know the healthcare professionals can have like different perspectives, but it was a big difference between like 1 to 4 centimeters. And knowing that I was having contractions and they were becoming stronger, I knew, you know your body, I knew it was progressing. And when it got to the time where I felt the urge to push, I knew it was like, I knew something was disconnected because he kept saying things that made no sense. And in my head, it was very clear, but I couldn't express it. Like, I know I'm progressing. I know this is part of it. And I kept asking, okay, but like, is there any sort of like relief measures? And in Brazil, you have like the walking epidural, for example, which you don't have, it's not as common in Canada. So they can give you like a very low dose of epidural in which you still have like your leg movements. It just like soothes the pain. But he did not want to say that. At this point, I was asking for whatever, Advil, Tylenol, Buscopan, anything to help me out because I had no other measures, water or massage or a doula, because he told me like, I don't work with doulas, blah, blah, blah. And the thing, when I asked him about a doula, remember that on one end, I was already like, not traumatized, but like a little sketchy because of the approach of the doulas that I got in touch. I'm not saying all doulas are like this, but in Brazil, because everything becomes like a product and a product for the privileged, the doulas that I had a contact with, they were all like, I just work with this doctor. It's like a package they're selling you, like a vacation package.
Yeah. So you wouldn't be able to get a separate doula. Like he's like, I don't work with doulas, so you weren't allowed to just bring your own doula if you wanted to?
I would. But the thing is, because my experience talking to 4, 5, 6 different doulas was the same, like I only work with this doctor and this and that. And I was like, but I want to work with my own doctor because I trust him.
Yeah.
He told me, he promised me, he like believes in my birth plan and he's only going to do a C-section if absolutely necessary. So like, why won't you? I felt rejected. And I felt like if your role as a doula is to educate your client, is to talk to your client, or potential clients, is to like make a better world for women. And I understand it's a delicate position because sometimes the birthing person does not want to hear or is not open for that. So I feel like a lot of doulas will just like take a step back and not even get into that. And in Brazil, because everything's so productized, and the experience I had with these particular doulas kind of like gave me the impression, well, is there a doula that's going to like wants to take care of me and not like care whoever the doctor is? Like that's all I want.
Yeah.
I gave up.
Yeah.
So when he told me, you know what, I don't really work with doulas normally, to me, that was not a sign that he was pro C-sections and that he would push me to this, which I was later blamed by a lot of people. Like, you should have seen the signs. How? In every appointment, he said he backed up my plan. He read the birth plan. He said he was like, he agreed with every single thing. He would respect it. Like, I know, and like now with a lot of knowledge, of course it would raise a red flag if he said, oh, I don't normally, like now.
But that's the thing, right? Like a lot of women, it takes going through that to then be like, oh shit, yeah, totally, I can see that now. But most women getting into this birth space are not thinking that way. They haven't had those lived experiences to be able to draw those conclusions and see those red flags, right? Exactly. So to blame you for that, it's insane, yeah.
And I felt very abandoned, like one, by the healthcare professional, the doctor, by all the doulas that were in touch with me, and everyone else on my way that could have like explained to me or like walked me through or like given me like some sort of like light for me to see and understand what was happening. But I had to draw these conclusions later alone and grieving because of my experience. And at that time, I didn't know. So for me, everything was okay. Like the baby was fine and everything was progressing. But when he started with those comments, like change the plan and this and that, anyway, that all went on for hours up until a point where I could not respond anymore. So he went to my husband. And then he made my husband sign for my C-section.
Wow.
So my husband, who had already lost a baby, was completely shocked because not only was I in pain, like because it's painful. You don't have to suffer, but yes, sometimes like you will feel pain. He didn't know what to do. He wanted to protect me. And then you have a doctor like wanting to go home, wanting to rest, to prep for his next surgery, which I only knew about later. And he goes to your husband kind of like in a threatening way, like, if you don't take this action now, if you don't decide for this now, if you guys don't go for it now, like you're putting both at risk. So when he signed, I was completely powerless. And not that he decided for me, just let's make it clear. My husband did not decide for me. He just signed a paper. But at this point, I was already convinced by the doctor that this was my only way to go. But I just couldn't speak anymore. So I kept on like nodding and saying, like my body wanted to say, my heart wanted to say, no, like no, I just need help to get through the pain. That's all I need. But there was no nurses. The doctor wasn't willing for that.
Wow.
Husband was in shock. So my body was like, okay. But my heart was like, no. It was just the most weird experience because I felt like an out of this body experience. I ended up going to the room. I had an anesthesiologist who poked me 3 times because he couldn't find the right spot to give the epidural. Very impatient, not very nice.
Oh.
And that distracted me from everything that happened. And all I know and remember is like I lay down, like I lie down. I was laying down. They were performing the C-section. At this time, I didn't even like have in my mind, like, it's a surgery. It's a big surgery. All I was like waiting for was my baby. And I remember the weight of like both the baby and the placenta being placed on my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I thought, we tried to put the music on because the surgery room had like speakers, but my husband was like, his phone at that time had no battery. The family was asking about me. Like everything was going on. No one was helping. We kept asking this and that. I mentioned, I do not want you to give the eye drops. They still did. I want to.
They still did. Wow.
Yes. I want to do like the golden hour. Like I want him to come to me. But what I did not realize, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I want to share so that people can see, which was my shock and surprise. So,
Okay.
because everything happened this way, I was not conscious of what was happening. Then when I received my video from, because I barely had time, like I had hired a photographer, video maker, blah, 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 because I really wanted this to be the only thing that I could have because the pandemic like kind of like took everything away from me. Like, so I wanted to have memories, and I knew my husband wasn't going to be able to like record because I know him. I knew he was going to be like emotional too. So I got the video, and that's the first image of the video, which is my hand tied up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did not know or remember that my hands were tied up. up until I saw the video. So the first time that I saw the video, I felt so robbed, so broken, so abused that somebody had the audacity of
Yeah.
robbing me everything, my movement, my freedom. And supposedly, that's very normal in Brazil. It's to keep the field sterile and safe, but that's so outdated.
Yeah, it's insane that that's still done that way in some places. Like insane.
and that
Ugh,
was,
it's disgusting.
I remember, like, I love this video. I love the music. I love everything. Like, I don't even mind that at the end, like, it was a C-section. He was fine. Great. Like, I came to terms with that. But this particular image was ingrained, and it still is, in my head. And I felt like, I feel, because I think anytime a woman suffers like any type of OB violence or neonatal violence, it equals, and I can say that, to being sexually abused, because it's your body and people are robbing you of your body and your
Yeah.
decisions,
Yeah.
and the feelings that it is the same, is
Yeah.
exactly the same.
Yeah, and a lot of women have had like other types of sexual abuse or rape, and then when they're in the same situation, it's extra traumatizing because it's that same feeling of things are being done to my body without my consent, and I feel like I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And you're just there, and you just let it happen. And I know that this is also a common theme a lot of the time with sexually abused victims, because they're scared, so they don't fight because they're scared that they're going to be hurt really bad if they do fight back. And a lot of the times in the hospital, it's that same feeling where it's like, I have to be a good girl or else they're going to be pissed at me. Like, I can't scream and say, stop, I don't want this, this is my body, don't touch me. You just feel like helpless, like I just have to let them do this to me. And
Yeah.
it's an awful feeling. Yeah.
And as a high risk pregnant person, to me, it felt, maybe I didn't do everything in my power to have a different outcome. Maybe this is my fault. Maybe, like, I thought, it's like a feeling of loss and grief. Like, I lost the battle and I thought, like, I did well. I thought I did everything that I could, but apparently not, because here's the outcome that I feared the most. And I knew there was no medical reason for it. It's not like there was no medical reason. It was simply because he wanted to go home. And by the time when he was opening me up, the comment was, I'm late for my C-section at 7:30. My son was
Wow.
born at 7:29 a.m. So at that, it was also a revealing moment, because I was like, okay, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
And when you're laying down with an epidural, you can't run away. People are cutting off 7 layers of your body. And you come to the realization that whatever you're going through is not what you signed up for, and there's no reason for it. You were fooled. You were deceived. You're being abused. Your heart splits and breaks into, what the hell? And I just want my baby to be okay, because that's the only thing that's left for me, is for my baby to come out and be okay. So my baby came out. He was a large baby, but not like an extremely large macrosomic baby as they would expect if I had, like, my diabetes under not controlled. He was
Yeah.
just a big baby. I was a big baby. My husband was a big baby.
Yeah.
So, which is also something they tried to pin on me. No, it's because he was too big and this and that. Like, whatever. And he weighed 3.7 kilos. That's not a big baby.
That's not that's average. Yeah. That's crazy.
But
Yep.
although, like, 36 weeks, 3.7, it's still.
Oh, right. It was 36 weeks. So, yeah. But still, that is still average. He was ready to come. That's why he came early, because he was fully developed and ready to come.
Exactly. But we all know, if you deep dive a little bit into birthing, like birth and neonatal education, you know that if, depending on the approach and conduct of the healthcare professionals, you may have an impact on the baby. So a C-section for no reason can have an effect. Not letting the baby be breastfed within the first hour can have an effect. And he was born, and then because they kept him away from me, like, and started doing all these procedures, including the eye drops, I only nursed him after maybe 3 hours,
Oh,
and
wow.
his blood sugar was lower than
Low? Yeah.
expected, and
Yeah.
not low because, and it was very easy to say, oh, but you're diabetic, so your blood sugar, his blood
Mm-hmm.
sugar, it's actually your fault. When I know that my control was near to perfect,
Yeah.
and that was not the cause. The cause was
No.
you gave me no food for
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
You put him through a C-section and me
Yeah.
for nothing. And
Yeah. Stressed
I
out
had no
both of your
golden hour.
bodies. Yeah,
So
exactly.
after that, we went to the room. Everything was fine. My husband went to grab the things that he forgot at home because it had been a long night. And he was like, I'm just going to go home, shower, and come back with the things that are missing and some things for me too. At this time, the nurse came in, and in my birth plan, which I had not, it had not been printed or respected whatsoever, they came and said, hey, we need to take the baby for further examination to see like the blood sugar, this and that. And I'm like, no, please wait for my husband to come back because he, like, it's in my birth plan. He needs to be with the baby at all times. No, it's
Yeah.
going to be very quick. So they didn't respect me, took the baby away.
Wow.
My
Wow.
husband came back, and he's like, where's our son? I'm like, well, they took him for an exam, but it's been a few hours. So here I am after like a few hours of surgery, just like dragging myself through the hallway because I didn't let,
Ugh.
my husband couldn't stop me, asking, where's my baby? Where's my baby? So they came into the room, and the doctor said, so his blood sugar didn't come back like to the levels that we expected. So we're going to have to like do an IV. And in my head, it was like, okay, like, because the pediatrician said if he has low blood sugar, there are a few options and they might do it. Like, for example, give him a little bit of formula or an IV. Depends on the situation, but like nothing to worry. It's just, I know you don't want to, like, you want to breastfeed and everything, but that's, we can stick to the plan. Like, but please note that these are things that may happen. So when he came and said he's going to do an IV, and I was like, okay. Then a couple more hours have passed, and I'm like, okay, where's my son? Like, an IV should not take this long for like a newborn.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I was in a hospital hallway, like screaming to get help because they were understaffed. And this was like the top hospital, private hospital in Sao Paulo.
Wow.
When they came back and said, well, your husband is on the second floor, you just go, and they gave me like the directions. This is when it clicked. Second floor. That's the NICU. No one said the word NICU. No one. So as my husband like was pushing the wheelchair, because at this time he convinced me stop walking, he just had surgery, we went to the second floor, followed the directions, and then I look and it's like NICU rooms, and I'm like, so here I'm looking for my baby with the receptionist, and this is his name, blah blah blah. Oh, what's your name? Mariana. Oh, he's in room blah blah blah. So as I walk into the NICU, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, maybe there's like a
Mm-hmm.
shortcut for like the
Yeah.
nursery, because they have like those like collective
Mm-hmm.
nurseries. And I'm like, that's when the nurse points me to the room that he was in with two other or three, two, like a set of twins and another premature baby. And then I see my son in an incubator with an IV, with like the oxygen, and with and I was like shocked. And it was COVID. So they are like, you're not allowed to have your phone. So for the first few days of his life,
What?
he was in the NICU for 4 days. I had no pictures. I had to come and breastfeed
Oh.
the specific times. And if I was late for even a minute, they would have already fed him formula.
Wow.
And I was like in shock for like everything that I just told you.
So you
And
were
then,
never fully informed that like
no,
your baby has been admitted to the NICU. You know, you were
no.
under the impression they were taking your baby away. We're gonna do this quick procedure, bring it back. Baby's gonna stay with you. And why couldn't you have a phone during COVID? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Just
It's
make it
like,
extra traumatizing.
it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And it was just revolting. And I was in shock. And so it took me a long time to process this experience. Um, my son was there for 4 days and his oxygen levels had dropped. And we all know it's a very common cause when babies and moms are put under a
Yeah.
procedure, a C-section procedure that has no medical reasons, or that, but no need. A C-section for
And
no
when the
need.
baby's
That
just separated from the mom, it's
no golden
detrimental to
hour.
them.
A
Yeah.
C-section for like to speed up the birth just because. So I knew that, but again, it's like I know those things, but I can't speak up. I don't know. Like I feel abused. I feel like violated. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
in shock. I just lost a
Yeah.
first baby. So, and at the same
Yeah.
time, you have like this, the angel and the devil. Like you just lost a
Mm-hmm.
baby like less than a year ago. You have a new baby. Like shut up and just like comply because you want him to be
Mm-hmm.
healthy. So like just suck up to like
Yeah.
your the wishes and just like
Mm-hmm.
be grateful that he's
Just
here.
be grateful.
Which
Yeah.
is what I've heard when I went to my
Mm-hmm.
first like doctor's
Yeah.
appointment after 4 or 6 weeks. You know what, Mariana? You left the hospital with your baby in your hands. And the only reason why that happened, or else they would have sent me home, is because I worked for the same company that owned the hospital. So I was an executive for a company that owned the hospital. So they let me stay for an extra couple of days, or else they would have sent me home. And
Wow.
because they made a mistake when doing my admission to put me in an apartment, which the company had
Mm.
gifted me and given me like a different room, and they were like extremely apologetic. Um, so that was my first birth story. But after that, the good the positive aspect of it. So I spoke to the hospital uh, director, like the birth unit director, and again, only because I was connected with the company that owned the hospital. So because I was like somebody with certain influence, like I was able to get to her. I can't imagine moms that try and they can't.
Yeah.
I told her the entire experience. To be honest, till this day, do not know what type of medication they administered because they put me in an IV, although I said, no, I don't want it. I want no medication. But that story, oh, if we have the IV access, it's just easier because if there's an emergency, blah, blah, blah. Same
Yeah.
story that here you hear like, don't you want to like have an IV and maybe like just take the epidural from the beginning? Because if you go into like an emergency, it's better. At least you're going to be able to watch the birth. You're just going to have the epidural,
Or
not
else
go
you get
under.
general anesthesia. Exactly. Yeah.
So those like subtle violences that feels like they make it feel like they're taking care of you, but they're not. They're just taking care of themselves and what's most convenient. And if it's like a naturally perfect labor and delivery in which like things go as expected and there's no major interventions needed, or it only requires interventions they're comfortable with, then that's great. If not, we'll just go to the most extreme procedure. And I talked to her. I explained from everything from like not being able to print my birth plan, not being able to do anything that I wanted. So a couple of things changed. And I'm very happy to say because that has impacted the lives of hundreds, thousands of moms, because that was about 5 years ago. They now
Mm-hmm.
implemented um, a procedure in which they ask about the birth plan when the mom is being admitted. If she doesn't have it, they print it. And there is a dedicated space for the birth plan in every birth room in the
Wow.
hospital.
That's amazing, Mariana.
Yeah. I think being able to do that in a hospital that has like the largest number of births in the largest city in my country
Yeah, that is
is a
huge.
is a huge thing.
Yeah, that's a
And
big win.
it's a win. Not that I would go back there, but for any other mom that feels like they need this. And I heard that from a group of mom. like I didn't know that they were going to do this until they talked to me. I was in a mom group on WhatsApp, and a mom said, hey, like a friend of mine went to like the same hospital to give birth, and the doula mentioned, like, I know the doula, so the doula was like happy, and she mentioned that she had a very positive experience. They asked about the birth plan. They put the birth plan in the room, blah, blah, blah. So I went to the director, and she said, yeah, we did that because of you, because of your conversation with us. So, and then she explained a few more procedures. The other procedure that we changed is because the NICU does not have contact with the rooms, if the mom is staying in the hospital, a lot of the times two things happened. One, medication and meals kind of like interfering with the feeding hours in the NICU. So sometimes I would be late, not because I wanted or because I wasn't responsible, but just because if somebody's in the room taking my blood and then I have to go like in a wheelchair, get an elevator. And sometimes like your husband is like, I don't know, out eating something or sleeping or doing whatever, which was the case for a couple of times. And you have to wheel yourself. It's not very easy after you had like major surgery.
Yeah, no.
And the other thing that used to happen is like in a NICU room, like at least in that specific hospital, you have the NICU and multiple rooms with like a limited number of babies. If a baby is having a procedure, and then no one can come in, including the other parents, because it may be shocking, maybe something that not everyone is prepared, and also like for the safety and privacy of the baby, which I can understand. But being in the hospital and going to visit your baby to try and nurse them after all that happened, and having all the trouble to go like down a few floors and getting to the room and being told, no, you cannot see your baby. So that happened once. It was Monday. So he was born on a Sunday morning. Monday, I did not see him for about 12 hours because they were doing procedures. But they failed to tell me. And they kept saying, just come back the next time. Just come back the next time. And then in my head, I'm like, I need to nurse him. I need to see him. I need to know how he is. And I can understand the other babies, and I'm empathetic to the other families. But like, so I ended up screaming in the NICU up until somebody was able to help me calm down and get me back to my room. But I was like, this isn't absurd. Like, I want to see my baby.
It is absurd. Like, and like, it's absurd that you have to scream and make a fuss for them to be like, oh shit, okay, Mama Bear's here. Let's give her what she wants. It's like, how dare you separate a baby from its mother? Try to do that to a bear.
Yeah. And like, if you're doing a procedure and it requires privacy, like, why don't you just leave a dedicated room for that? And then you don't impact all the other moms, because you're talking about 4 or 5 babies in the same room and you're impacting like 4 or 5 families. It's ridiculous. Especially like in my case, I was fortunate because I was in the hospital. But what if you're a mom that is traveling from far, commuting every day? Like my best friend, she had her baby and she had a heart condition. So she was in the NICU for almost a year, like more than 6 months. She had to commute every single day. And for her, some days, of course, it was exhausting, but some days she just wanted to see the baby and she wasn't able to. So those are the kind of procedures that when you look and you take a step back, you're like, this is a stupid procedure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very stupid. And it's like not possible that you have a hospital with administration and nurses and people that see this every day, that they're not able to pinpoint this, or like, it's not possible that no one else gave this feedback before. So why do I have to be the person that's like screaming about it?
Exactly. Yeah.
And what I can say about this, although we had positive consequences, is my feeling is that this has impacted not only this birth, but my entire motherhood journey and the future.
Of course. All right, guys, this is it for this week. Tune in next week to hear part 2 of Mariana's story, where she shares her second pregnancy at birth with us. Thank you so much for tuning in to Birth Unboxed. If you've enjoyed today's conversation and want to hear more, please consider subscribing to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and leaving a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts or even your own birth stories, so feel free to connect with me via Instagram at thebirthunboxed.podcast or through my website linked in the show notes. Until next time, friends.